The following is a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio.
Welcome back to the Keefer and Kurre. Do you need to get yourself a drink? If you're just listening to Need to Know, if you had not listened to Need to Know,
take a pill, but
well, I'm kind of glad that I'm taking the show in a little bit of a different situation because I do think we need to lighten the mood a little bit because sometimes we do that.
Speaking of lights, I didn't turn mine on today, so I probably look like I'm sitting in the dark.
No, it looks fantastic. Actually, you look really good. You look like you're sitting on Fox News, man. It looks fantastic. So I told you we had lunch last week. And I told you last week, I said there's some shows, and it's amazing because you and I are the same age. We both have kids. We both are divorced, and so there's a lot of things, and we're relatively the same age. And so I saw this Chevy Chase documentary that was on CNN. And by the way, CNN does great documentaries. And in case you watch it, I mean, the F-bombs are flying on it. It's fantastic because I'm not used to watching television and hearing an F-bomb because I don't normally rent movies and stuff like this. So when I hear that on regular TV, it's like, whoa.
Get your attention, yeah.
Yeah, it really does. And it really adds to it. So I'm Chevy Chase and you're not, which of course is the thing that he used to say whenever he opened up Saturday Night Live. It's a great documentary, and it is causing a lot of ruckus, if you will, not only in the television biz, but also in the comedic biz. And it's just fantastic. He's 82 years old, was beaten as a child. I mean, watch the show. I don't want to give it away. If you're looking to watch it to laugh, it's not necessarily something funny, but it's really amazing because comedians are strange birds. I've got an opportunity to have a lot of opportunities to go to the comedy club stardom. I know a lot of comedians. You get around them, and you and I were just speaking before the show. You know, I used to get hired, and people were like, "Okay, make me laugh," and I'm like, "I'm not a comedian." You know, when I had two people to play off of on a morning show, I could crack those guys up. I could get going, and once in a while, I would get on a rant, and I could let it rip. But to get on stage and make people laugh is the hardest thing that I think anyone could possibly do. And it'll scare the hell out of a lot of people because first of all, it's one thing to get up there and speak to a group of people. It's another to get paid to make them laugh. And it's really hard to make people laugh. So today I want to talk about your favorite comedians. We have talked about music. We've talked about all kinds of songwriters, but we never talked about the spoken word, if you will. And that's something that I think is really interesting because, Napster got this whole thing started. Did you realize that the spoken word is not protected? In other words, I have to pay a licensing fee for all the music I play here. I have to pay like 0.00018 cents per song or whatever. And part of it goes to the songwriter. Some of it goes to the artist. Some of it goes to the label. Some of it goes, and that way everyone's getting their piece of the pie. Now, by the time, and you ask Neil Young or Damon Johnson, by the time they get their check, it's so small. Everyone takes a big chunk and everyone takes their piece of the pie. And then by the time it gets to them, it's like a waitress getting her check for her hourly rate. They get $1.17 an hour, or whatever. Right. Anyway, unless of course you're big time like Taylor Swift or something like that, where you're actually making some serious bucks on streaming. But the spoken word, they get nothing. So if I wanted to run a Jerry Seinfeld radio station and I just played all Jerry Seinfeld for 24 hours a day and I was monetizing it, there's nothing anyone could come and get me. Jerry Seinfeld couldn't sue me. There's nothing out there that protects the spoken word. It really sucks for a lot of comedians because comedians for the most part are broke. They work their asses off for years and years and years. And you see these people thinking, man, what a great life, making millions of dollars. It's just so rare. It's just so rare to see a comedian like a Bill Burr or even an Amy Schumer, hit the big time. Probably less than it is actually to be a songwriter, I would think. It's just because it's such a difficult thing. But anyway,
let me give you a quick example. Yeah. We hired year before last, we hired Jimmy J.J. Walker to come down and do a commercial with us at the Birmingham race course, from Good Times. Yeah. He was the teenager, in that era. And
Dynamite. Yeah.
There you go. That you made my point. Do you know that in the commercial, and in any stand-up or anything Jimmy J.J. Walker does, he cannot say dynamite. He's not allowed to say it. Prohibited from saying, because he doesn't own that. Now, he's the one.
Kidding me.
No, this is so to your point, because originally Monty Ballard, who was involved in that, had written a script where he was going to declare the Birmingham Racecourse Casino dynamite. Well, he said, nope, I can't do that because that's owned by whatever production company that every time he says dynamite, he can say it, but it's going to cost $3,500 per time that you say dynamite.
That is ridiculous.
In a commercial like ours. And of course, we said, well, we'll just leave dynamite out. And he kind of talks around it.
That is the dumb.
Isn't that
is ridiculous.
That wouldn't even be. And immediately I said, Jimmy J.J. Walker. First thing you said was dynamite. He's not allowed to say that word.
Now I see him. He actually does. No, he doesn't do it anymore. But he was on one of these Colonial life insurance policy commercials where actually does say dynamite. But then I guess if they're willing to spend the $3,500,
need up the money. But
that reminds me of Buffer's got the big thing. Let's get ready to. I won't even say it because
let's get ready to. Yeah.
They got people out there that just they pay people.
Let's get ready
just
to crumble.
Yeah, let's get ready to crumble. And I mean, we get something. We had to write it every year in radio. Every single year,
even his own brother can't. His own
brother can't do it. Which is ridiculous.
He had to write his own, and I don't think it's quite as effective as Michael's. Bruce Buffer's, if you go to a UFC event, it's time.
Yeah, no,
that's not quite as impactful.
It's not even close. Well, do you remember when we used to go to Farrell's or Fridays or whatever for birthday parties, and for a while you couldn't sing Happy Birthday? I was like, are you shitting me? We could not sing. It was the dumbest thing.
By somebody else.
Yeah. Now I think it's after a certain period of time it goes bye. And now you can sing. But there were restaurants that were actually being sued because their crew would come out and sing Happy Birthday like regular, which is just so dumb. I mean, it's a lot of people. I think someone owns we could do a whole show on this too. Owns Three-Peat. Someone owns the word three-peat. I mean, there's people.
Oh, it's a coach. It's not Pete Carroll. It's some other coach. But yeah, exactly. But it's an old time coach. I used to know this. I can't. But yeah, you can't say three-peat because it's owned. The rights are owned by we copyrighted.
Yeah, we used to do. You couldn't say Super Bowl. We do commercials.
Oh yeah.
Now you take a shot. We'd have a Super Bowl party. We call it a Super Bowl party, but we would get this stuff from Cumulus saying these are the words you can't say, and so we'd have to say the big game or blah 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 because we could be sued for it, which was absolutely ridiculous. Anyway, that's another story for another time. So I was talking to a friend of mine this morning. And he had his son do something for Eagle Scouts where they had to plant a garden, and he ended up planting. He had 100 seeds. He planted a field of watermelons. And out of that 100 seeds, only 60 the watermelons. He said, Tony, I had damn watermelons up to my ears. I had so many watermelons. We were all kind of laughing. I was around the support group. And I was like, wow, that's amazing, because I actually had Gallagher, who came into my studio. And while he was there in my studio, this is 97, 98, 99, something like that. I had to go down to Dave's pub down in Southside and do my show live on Fridays. And I invited him. I said, do you want to come down to Dave's with me? And so he came down, Gallagher did, and he stood on the street corner outside Dave's on Southside, and he was playing Boutwell Auditorium that night. And we were supporting, we were supporting the show. And so I hung out the night with Gallagher. And I think I've told you my story about Sam Kennis and having an all-nighter with him, and my girlfriend kicked me out of her apartment. And so I've gotten some pretty good stories on comedians. But I would be interested to know what kind of comedians. Rolling Stone just came out with their top 50 comedians of all time.
Interesting.
And I'm just thinking some of the ones that I know off the top of my head. Gallagher, Ron White was big. Sam Kennison, Dennis Leary, I thought was really funny when he first came out. Red Fox, Eddie Murphy, Bob Newhart, which is one of my favorites, and he goes way back.
Oh, me too.
I never really understood the Andy Kaufman thing. I never understood his humor, but he was named as one of the top 50. So their top is from 12 to 1, Robin Williams, Steve Martin, Mort Saul, Dave Chappelle, Bill Cosby, Jerry Seinfeld, Joan Rivers, Chris Rock, Louis C.K., Lenny Bruce, George Carlin #2, and Richard Pryor is their #1 comedian all time. And I just thought it was fun. And I do implore you to watch this Chevy Chase show, because I think you'll really enjoy it, because I would. It's all about, it's got a lot of television in it. The first thing he says in it, and of course, if you pull up Chevy Chase right now, Google Chevy Chase, there's about a 15-minute, he's trending on X and every social media, because he tells the gal who's doing the documentary, he apologizes to her. He goes, I'm so sorry. And she goes, for what? And he goes, for being an asshole. And she said, you're not being an asshole. He goes, no, but I'm going to be. Yeah. And he tells her, I'm going to be a total asshole. And
that really is his MO.
That is his MO. He is an asshole. But the thing is, he knows he's an asshole. And when you talk to someone who's an asshole and they know they're an asshole, we kind of give them a benefit of the doubt.
Yeah,
we kind of like, yeah, and the fact that he's in one of the greatest Christmas movies of all time, we're willing to kind of look the other way and let him be his old crotchety self. He's been, and just let him kind of go off into the, and then they showed this thing at the end of in the documentary where he actually goes around to different movie theaters and they have these screenings of National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, and he comes out and he actually signs autographs and he cries. I mean, there's 3,000 people there watching his movie, and he loves the adoration. He loves the fact that people love who he is, and he knows he's an asshole, and he feels bad about it, but he's just an asshole. It's just the way he is.
Yeah, that's just how he is.
Now, he's not a stand-up guy, but I was thinking about some of these comedians, and I really wanted to kind of get your thoughts, because I think you could tell a lot about a person about what kind of comedians they like.
Yeah. Well, first of all, let me make sure that I'm clear about this.
Sure.
I know there are a lot of comedians out there right now. I don't know anything about any of them. Yep. I don't circle in that universe anymore. I really don't go out. I don't see acts. I don't
either. No, it's fine. Like Bill Burr is like a relatively new one to me.
People throw names at me all the time, and I just have a blank look on my face.
Mitch Hedberg.
That's not disrespect to modern day comics. Sure. I just, my television choices, I don't seek out comedy when I'm, I tend to gravitate back, and I'll Chevy Chase is an asshole. Kip Keefer is a dinosaur. I tend to frequent places that I'm familiar with, and that it's nostalgic and comforting for me. I'm really not a very good contemporary voice.
Well, I will tell you that on your starting lineup show coming soon, that the Comedy Club will probably be one of your sponsors. So you may. Well, that's great. Bruce Ayers is a good friend of mine.
Because one of the only comics I've seen in recent years was this guy named Phil Van T, and I don't think Phil might be working in a warehouse now. Yeah. But we saw him at the Comedy Club Stardome or whatever, and he was hilarious. He was great. If I got out more, I might be more of contemporary, but Phil Van T was just one of these real dark, kind of weird looking guys that looked like he should be working in a funeral parlor, all in black, standing up there, and he just had the real dry voice. When I was in high school in biology class, my experiment, they said was an abomination or whatever. Everybody, I can't remember exactly, but I'm butchering it. But the component that I invented in biology or whatever class it was, stroke, 15 or 20 classmates were stricken with some kind of disease. He goes, they called it an aberrant project. I called it a successful scientific achievement.
There you go. He sounds like a little Stephen Wright. He's got a little Stephen
very
Wright.
Much like that.
Like the Mitch Hedbergs and some of the newer guys. And I say newer guys because Mitch Hedberg, of course, is no longer with us, but he's been around for a long period of time. You're right. When I first got XM Sirius Satellite Radio, the only thing I could listen to was the Comedy Channel. I loved it. It was great. Yeah. It was one of the few channels they run commercials on. And it was just one thing after another, and I loved it. And I know that if you ever watch the Comedy Channel, they do a lot of stand-up acts and stuff like that. And and that's exactly why I asked, because I didn't think you had been to the Comedy Club. I've
not for
pardon me, Bruce, but I will be going to the Comedy Club. I think the last time I went there, I saw Jeez, who did I see? Andrew Dice Clay. It was the second time around, really? And it was fantastic. This was after he fell off, after he was on late night and cried and the whole 9 yards, and then came back like 10 years later, and it was one of the funniest shows I've ever seen. It was really, really good. But what I'm interested to know is what kind of comedians you do like. What kind of comedians did you like growing up? Because we had an incredible conversation this morning between the four of us talking about all of our favorite comedians back in the day, back in the 70s and 80s. I wasn't a big Red Fox guy. I never heard Richard Pryor do stand up, although I know he's one of the greatest comedians of our time. But I was interested to see what kind of comedians you do like, and that make Kip Keefer laugh.
Well, I mean, in the growing up period, I have fond memories of, sneaking around and staying up past bedtimes because Johnny Carson was so understated.
Oh, man.
As the host of Tonight Show, but Johnny Carson's monologue was always good, and that was written by others. But even the skits, to this day, the Art Fern movie, he sat there with Carol Wayne, who had breasts the size of the Teton Mountains.
Yeah.
And she was half dressed in the 1960s. It was like scandalous. It was almost like Elvira on the starting lineup that we had. That women
She's
are
coming back in October, by the way. If you want,
and if that was all you're doing, and I'm still being beaten to death by every woman.
One of our most watched shows, by the way, that we've ever had on the starting lineup.
Shocking.
Yeah.
But anyway, if you remember, it was a playoff of in that era in the 60s, every TV station had this cheesy, matinee so-and-so. And he was like the typical guy. He wore a red blazer. He had like a stick that he could point to stuff. And it was hilarious. He'd go, okay, let's get back to our movie. He's, and he would have all James Dean, Mean Joe Green, so-and-so, all of them would run and Humps the Perverted Camel starring in, and it was hilarious.
Yeah.
He would always look at Carol Wayne's equipment and say, this is the biggest hit I'm aware of. I mean, just really slapstick, stupid stuff. But those are great memories. I got into George Carlin early on, when he was just starting to make it big.
Man, he was, and of course he had the seven
words
you couldn't say,
but stupid things like, okay, wait a minute, he would be a newsman, he'd go, partial score from the West Coast, San Francisco 14.
But I'll never forget, he played the Birmingham Jefferson Civic Complex, the concert hall, and my wife at the time had just had a miscarriage. And I thought, man, this is going to be perfect. I'm going to take her, go down to see George Carlin. She'll forget about it. It was just horrible. It was our first miscarriage. I didn't realize that 1 in 3 women had miscarriages, and we were just. I mean, it was horrible.
It's
horrible.
Devastating.
It was devastating, and I didn't realize just how common it was, but it's still devastating. Death is common, but it's devastating.
Yeah.
And the first thing he does is he gets up there and he starts talking about wanting to try some new material out, and he did a lot. He would put new material on index cards.
Yeah, I wasn't afraid to go different directions.
And he did this whole bit on death. It was like, oh my gosh, talking about suicide. And I was like, oh, we had to get up and leave. I mean, I was like, I was like, it was just too close to what we had just been through, and it wasn't funny. And, some people thought it was funny. Some people didn't, but that was just his type of humor. But yeah, that was the last time I saw him, but he was an incredible, he really, stretched, if you will, the elasticity of what comedy could be, and just the way he did the stand up and way he did stuff. I go back to we had Saturday nights, man, and Saturday nights were Carol Burnett nights. We don't have to talk so much about
some geniuses on that show too, for sure.
Man, I mean, Harvey Korman was just
Tim Conway.
Was hilarious. Mr. Tudball. Just some of the funny stuff. But I just remember because the comedy now, it got to a point, and I'm trying to think, who would you say? I would have to say, who was the first mainstay cultured type of comedian that can really drop a lot of F-bombs that can get away with it. Was it I'm trying to think.
I mean, it's before my time, but I think a lot of people consider the real breakthrough comic that kind of transformed it from that kind of silly era is Lenny Bruce.
Yeah.
And I, of course, I was too young to ever have any knowledge of him. But in watching documentaries thinking about Lenny Bruce, he was really the first one who was just not scared to do any kind of material or
Eddie
use
Murphy.
any words.
Eddie Murphy. Yeah, I mean, he actually had a movie he actually did a movie. I think it was called Delirious. That was actually, if you wanted to see him, you go to the movie theater to watch. And I actually were going there, and I remember him making fun of the Cramdens. And I mean, he got out there and said some crazy things. You're like, whoa, I cannot believe he's going there. Yet he's he talked about the ice cream truck too.
And you mentioned Richard Pryor. It's still one of my greatest memories. Only the second time I ever went to Las Vegas in 1993 or 4, got to see Richard Pryor live, and I'm so blessed that I had that experience because I've never been so entertained in my life. This guy was just on stage, he was just magic. Yeah. And it's not even some of the more. He could get vile, and of course he dropped the N-bomb all the time, and that was shocking because nobody, you're just trained, you don't say that word, and but I have such memories of that because it was about half and half black and white, but all of us were equally just rolling on the floor. I mean, he got into subjects of things like he's talking about. And I don't know how he just came up to it, but he would just say, it kind of like reminds me of that night that Ali fought Brother Leon. He said, Brother Leon give him a rematch after the first one. And I still say this all the time. He says, and in that fight, Ali won, but he didn't really beat him. He just kind of beat him off him. He says every time Leon started some shit, he'd say, I'm going, Leon, Brother Leon, every time you start some shit, I'm going to grab your ass. and I'm going to hold on to you until you calm down because I got to have it this evening. He goes, all right, I'm going to turn you loose now. Take that one with you. I mean, just
he was one of the few comedians that could read the phone book and make it funny. And there's not a lot of guys that could do that. Yeah, I mean, Bob Newhart was another one of those guys where you just saw him on stage. You saw him.
I love the very end of. I mean, he was in his 90s, and he became a fan of The Big Bang Theory, the show that ran about 8 years.
Appearances, yeah.
And he played this kind of fringy character who was Professor Proton in his younger years, one of Sheldon, the main character's heroes.
Had a heart attack on the show.
Yeah,
as part of the show. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
But and then they kill him off on the show so he can come back as like the Jedi advisor for Sheldon because he's all into Star Wars and all that and Star Trek and he's like in robes. He goes, I'm not wearing pants. Just his timing and that intentional stutter. The guy was just great.
One of the best last shows was the Newhart show where he wakes up and Suzanne Plachette is in bed with him, and she wakes up and he's like, I just had the weirdest dream. And the entire show, and she shows up, she still looked wonderful. Yeah, that was really, really
the Bob
good.
Newhart show. That was great stuff. But Richard Pryor too. There's a movie he made that a lot of people will be shocked now because do you know that Blazing Saddles, Mel Brooks wrote the part of Sheriff Bart for Richard Pryor. Mm-hmm. And that was the intention of a lot of the jokes and one-liners. Now, Cleavon Little ultimately became the person in that movie, and he was fantastic. But now you mentioned Blazing Saddles. Oh, that movie's racist. That's the stupidest conclusion. Again, I really shudder to think how moronic people are because the whole point, the entire point of Blazing Saddles was to make fun of people that were simpletons enough to be racist.
One of the first things they show on this documentary is the skit that Chevy Chase does with Richard Pryor, and they're doing a word association. Do you remember this?
I know.
They're doing a word association, and he looks across. He goes, "Okay, we're gonna do a quick word association. A dog, cat." And they go back and forth, and Chevy goes, "Jungle Bunny."
Oh God!
and then Richard Pryor says, "Cracker." And then he comes back, and it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. And finally, wow. Chevy Chase says, and he says cracker. And finally, Chevy Chase says the N-word. And he said it on Saturday Night Live. And Richard Pryor says, dead cracker.
I do kind of
I was like, holy smokes, I cannot believe that actually ran on Saturday Night Live.
I know.
And that just goes to show that, from a comedy standpoint.
We weren't so, we were all cautious then, but we weren't so brainwashed to be so politically correct. You couldn't. And that's another thing. People would say that's racist now, but the whole idea of that exercise was to make fun of how ridiculous it was.
Absolutely. What are your takes on Bill Cosby? And he's 88 years old.
Yeah.
And I'm probably going to catch hell for this. I feel sorry for the guy. I do. And I know people are like, you're sick. I don't know Bill Cosby. I grew up listening to some of his albums. You want to talk about a strange way of his albums were, he won Grammys for his albums. That's how good those things were.
Brilliant material.
And he certainly in this list is like number 7 top comedians. He was just, it was so different because he'd tell these stories and he was hilarious. And he was America's father. And I want to remember him that way. And he did a lot of horrible things, and he drugged a lot of women, and he raped a lot of women, and he did all these things. And I don't even know if he's still in prison or not, or out of prison or whatever, but at the age of 88. And for some reason, he reminds me a lot of what Joe Paterno was towards the end of his life. It was like he gave his life. He did everything at that university. And at the end, we'll all remember from one thing. And that was what a piece of shit he was, because he didn't turn Jerry Sandusky in, and what a piece of shit Bill Cosby is for doing all the things he did later in his life. But one of the funniest guys that I had ever seen.
Oh, it was hilarious. Just a comic genius. You got to frame things in time. I mean, we're outraged at this point. At some points when he was doing a lot of those things, I just don't think there was very much attention on that kind of thing. At that time in society, you might, and it once again, things upside down, you might blame the woman for putting herself in that position because women pursued him because he was famous.
Yeah.
A lot of young women got in situations they shouldn't have been in. They shouldn't have gone into hotel rooms or gone to his house or all those kind of things.
Sure.
That doesn't limit or excuse by any means what he did, but now we're so sensitive to all of that, and rightly so.
Like the parents who allow their 14-year-olds to go visit Neverland at Michael Jackson's place. I'm like, come on, seriously? I mean, I love Michael Jackson, but my 13-year-old daughter ain't going to Neverland. That's weird. No.
Let's all sleep in the same bed.
No, that's not. No.
Yeah.
No, I've always been. You can never say they got what they asked for. Don't ever use that, because it doesn't work psychologically. It just doesn't work. But if you show up at Kobe Bryant's hotel room with a see-through dress on at 2:00 in the morning after making eyes at him in the bar all night, chances are something bad's going to happen. If you don't want it to happen, don't go. Just don't. That's why I always say you can run through a jungle with pork chop underwear, but good luck to you. I mean,
that's a great point.
Props, yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, I think being around, and you've been around a lot of famous people in your life, and I have too. I've been super blessed to have gotten a chance to meet so many individuals and bring them on stage. There is this untouchable thing about these people. They've been doing these things for a long time, and it doesn't make it right or wrong. And that's why when you get someone like a LeBron James or someone who's really, really rich and famous, and there's no dirt on them, it's amazing. It's incredible that they can live their life like, because everything is always available to them 24 hours a day. They can get whatever they want, whenever they want.
Absolutely.
And it's hard to say that, but
But while we're so quick to crucify others who do fall along the wayside, why don't we herald what you just said more? There's still people that hate LeBron James just because he's been successful and just because he's not really even outspoken, but he doesn't get credit for just, being one of the greatest players who's just stayed under the radar, never's been in controversy.
Tom Brady, another one. I mean,
yeah.
Think of some of the Derek Jeter.
And I'll tell you, and Tom Brady and Derek Jeter have really endeared themselves to me even more in their post careers. Tom Brady is terrific on Fox on the games. You talk about a guy with a wealth of knowledge, and he's kind of matter of fact. But I did watch the playoff game yesterday, the Eagles game. I haven't watched a lot of NFL this year, like from start to finish.
Great weekend of NFL action, by the way. Fantastic.
Yeah, but Brady is just great, and one of my favorite commercials. Now, I think the most brilliant commercial on TV right now is the one, and I don't even know. This is sad, and the advertiser needs to be aware of this. I can't even think what the product is.
Yeah.
But it's Jeter and Sally Ride, the astronaut.
Oh yeah.
And it's for some investment firm or bank or something, because he's the other guest on like career day, and all the kids are asking questions of him. When did you know you wanted to be a financial advisor? He goes, well, I always have believed that, saving people money and getting more. And they ask him like 5 straight questions.
Oh, it's Capital One commercial.
Yeah, Capital One. Yeah. Sally Ride looks at Jeter and goes, aren't you in the Hall of Fame? And he goes, didn't you go to space?
Yeah.
What a brilliant commercial. It's just great. So the Jeter, is willing, because he always kind of had the air of, professional arrogance, because he knew he was good. But for him to actually kind of make fun of his own fame, I love that commercial.
To go back to your point about Blazing Saddles and All in the Family and some of the shows that we could not make anymore. You think we've come a long way.
But is that progress that we can't be honest with each other?
Well, a lot of people would say it's progress because, we're being more sensitive towards others, but at the same time, I think that rears its head in the opposite direction. I will say this though, and I've said this a long time, for people to go to a comedy show. And like Carlos Mencia is a prime example. He makes fun of everybody. He makes fun of Latinos. He makes fun of white people, black people. He makes fun of, he talks about, Taco Bell and Kentucky Fried Chicken went in a partnership together and they both lost their money because the black people were working at KFC and the Mexicans were working at Taco Bell. Yeah. They're like, who came up with this brilliant idea? Switch staffs so you can make some money. I mean, it's hilarious. But anything in a comedy show to me is like off the table. You can do whatever you want in a comedy show. First of all, you're paying to watch the person. So if you go to a show and you don't like it, get your ass up and leave. Most cases, like Bruce Harris will tell you, there'll be rated R shows, or there'll be shows that, like, you don't go see a Carlos Mencia for the first time if you have no clue. If you just went and saw Bob Newhart in concert and then you want to go see Carlos Mencia, probably not the best matchup. But for the point that, when you're in a comedy show, anything goes. And if you don't like that type of humor, then don't go see that type of humor. I know a lot of people didn't like Andrew Dice Clay. I thought he was really, really funny at first. They kind of got sad. But a lot of people thought that about Richard Pryor. Just think about some of the comedians, you mentioned Lenny Bruce. He was huge because he did things that we had never seen or heard before. I mean, it was so blue. It was like, oh my God, Red Fox. Go watch Red Fox, on Sanford and Son. Right. And then go watch him do Jonathan Winters. Oh my gosh. Go see Jonathan Winters on one of these, Sunday afternoon Christmas shows, with Bob Hope, and then go watch him do stand-up. You're like, holy shit. I mean, it's I'm trying to think of the guy from Full House, Bob Saget. Oh,
yeah. Oh. Just crude as hell.
Oh my gosh, Bob Saget was such a clean guy on television. And then when you see him in person, you're like, holy crap. I mean, it was so wild. But I mean, that's great. I mean, that's good that people could do. The whole thing is and I said this, and I usually use it as a tag. If someone tells an off-color joke, and you're laughing at it inside, but not outside, it's still funny. It's still funny.
I just remembered, Tony, the last time I was at the comedy club, it was, I think maybe I don't know, 5-6 years ago, maybe. I have no time frame anymore. But my son was a big fan as a teenager, and you've met my son Clade, who's a brilliant technical kid and is doing great things. But he was a big fan of the Jackass movies.
Oh yeah.
Back in their heyday. And Steve-O, who was probably the most outrageous of all the characters, was actually doing a comedy tour as one of his comeback attempts. And we saw him at Stardome. And Steve-O was... He was rough around the edges, to say the least, as a stand-up guy, but just to hear him talk about his experiences was great. And the best part of that was at the very end, my ex-wife was up visiting at the time, and we're very congenial now. We've moved on from, we're best of friends. We are absolutely so proud of ourselves for our great accomplishment of our two sons we contributed to the world. But at the end of that show, he had a meet and greet for everybody to come up and he would sign whatever. And so Clayton wanted to do that. Clayton was maybe 14 or 15 at the time. So that was a lot. Clayton's 30 now. So that was 15 years ago. I said,
wow.
That's
5 or 6 years.
Yeah, that's typical of me, Tony. I have
dude, I'm with you too. I just I doubled the time. If I say 5 years, just double it, make it 10. It's about right. Yeah.
And he talked about a lot of personal stuff. He is completely out of control. The Jackass guys had to have an intervention with him. That's how bad it was. These are the wildest guys on the planet, and they had to intervene to try to save his life. Wow. But at the very end, he endeared himself to me forever, because when we went up there, he had a good conversation with us, and he had just been on Dancing with the Stars of all things.
Wow.
And Kathy said to him, "I loved you on Dancing with the Stars. I can't believe they eliminated you so early." And he stepped up and put his arm around her waist and took her hand, and for about 5 minutes did all this like ballroom dancing crap.
Oh, that's funny.
And she's still talking about it. She absolutely loved it.
That's great.
Because I was married to her for 14 years. I think we danced at our wedding, and I was one and done.
That was
baby.
about
That's
it. Yeah, well, you ain't no Dancing with the Stars either.
No, I'm not a candidate to go on that show, no matter how big Kip Keefer Sports becomes.
All right, we got a big show going on this weekend, man.
Really big show.
Yeah, we do. The starting lineup, and of course, you're all over the place. I'm all over the place right here on Tony Kurre Radio. We do our shows. Of course, they're live on our YouTube channel, so make sure you check them out wherever you get your favorite podcast. And of course, you can hear Need to Know and the Keefer and Kurre Show at least 5 days a week right here on Tony Kurre Radio. The starting lineup is going to be huge because, of course, it'll be our last Saturday before the National
Championship game. Mm-hmm.
Right now, it's Indiana and everyone else. Indiana giving up 6 and a stellar weekend, 3-point game, 4-point game, 3-point game, 4-point game, and then a 13-point game on the National Football League. Some of the biggest comebacks.
One more tonight on Monday.
Got me a little side bet with a legend a little bit later on tonight. Got me some Pittsburgh +3, so we'll see who comes out on top of that one. So I'm looking forward to that legend, our good friend, who's going to be on the show as well. So it's going to be fantastic. So make sure you check us out wherever you get all of your Kip Keefer, Tony Kurre stuff. You can find us, and we'll get after it. And tomorrow morning, K4 wins. We'll have some more handicapping get after 10 o'clock Central Time. That'll be live on the Coastal Sports Network, coming soon to VSiN as well as Tony Kurre Radio. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate you.
All right. Dancing with the Stars. Go
practice.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio.